You're now listening to In the Zone. I'm your host, Chris Josh. This is episode 3, Overcoming Fear. What if I told you that fear isn't your enemy, but that it can be your catalyst? Today, we're exploring how to overcome fear and use it to fuel your growth. Now, I used to have a fear of success because I assumed the workload was going to be too much to handle, that I wouldn't have time to hang out with friends, to watch TV, to take my daily drive, and a whole bunch of other things. I figured it was going to be a burden, and I was going to be very stressed out, and I was going to have more problems than the success would solve. I finally overcame that fear by realizing that my mind was making a bigger deal than it really was. I rationalized with myself that I didn't need to give it 150% starting out, that I could balance my life, I can allocate some time to do the things I like, and not to rush the process. I also realized that over time, I was going to be able to build my capacity to do more work. That I was going to start out slow and gradually add more work because success wasn't going to come overnight. I had plenty of time to adjust to do more work. And that's what helped me overcome the fear of success. I had to rationalize that success doesn't come, 1, 2, 3. That it was this gradual buildup. And over time, I was going to be able to afford help, people that could come in and I delegate the work to them, that I wasn't going to be a one-man show. Now, admittedly, at this stage of my life, I am a one-man show. I'm an author, and now I'm doing a podcast. I do social media. I do all the editing myself. I do all the concepts myself. And I'm okay with that because I didn't start doing everything all at once. I wrote my first book and I was doing social media prior to that. Then I built my website and, published more books and started publishing videos onto YouTube, Instagram, and other social media platforms. And now this is my 3rd episode for my podcast. So I'm gradually adding things as I get used to doing the basics or the initial things. And eventually, I'm not going to be able to do all the editing and other, small tasks that other people can do for me. So that mindset shift helped me overcome the fear of success. Again, this is episode 3, and we'll be talking about overcoming fear. The goal of the episode is to share with you some practical tips, mindset shifts, which I already discussed one, and personal empowerment. So, what is fear? Fear, according to me, is an illusion. It's something that is faulty from our logic. We are logical beings, men more so than women, but we like to play chess. We're always playing chess. If I do this, this is the next possibility. But that's how you get trapped in the cycle of fear. You can't assume that you know what's going to happen in the future. Because if you think about it, how many times were you anxious or fearful about something happening and then that thing actually happened? This is, by the way, how I got over my anxiety. I had an aha moment. I was like, well, almost 99% of the things I thought were going to happen didn't actually happen. I used to have a fear that I was gonna, you know, go under the ground for, 6 feet. And I always thought this is the day or this is the year at this age. And, you know, after so many years of that, it came to, my understanding that, this is all ridiculous, that fear is all in the mind. And a lot of it has to do with learned behavior from other people in person, in the media, on TV, etc. But once we have that aha moment and realize that fear is just something that we make up in our minds. So that's the best way I like to describe fear, right? It's just you thinking the worst is going to happen. And it's a bad habit to have. It's one of the, I think it's the worst habit to have, actually, being in fear all the time, as well as being anxious. But fear is actually a natural response designed to protect us. It's sort of, it creates, when a train is on a track and the track split, right? Fear is kind of like that. It forces you to go the other way. It forces you to think of a strategy. And so it's not all bad, but you need to learn how to control it and honestly completely eliminate it. If any fear comes up, it should only be there for a few seconds where you right away overcome it and understand what the purpose of that fear is at that moment. It steers you in the right direction, unless you fall in the trap and ruminate over that fear all day long for days to come. So there are a few types of fear. You have fear of failure. You have fear of success, which is what I talked about at the start of the episode. You have fear of the unknown. And you have fear of rejection or judgment. Now, fear of failure is natural, especially if you're going to invest time and money and energy. You don't want to invest so much only to fail, because it has other implications besides monetary. If the people in your life know you went after your dream and you failed, you may fear their response or judgments, and you might fear like you're going to look like a loser. But the fact is, everybody fails. The most successful people actually probably fail the most, because you have to try a lot of things to find something that works. Sometimes you get lucky, you try one thing and that thing succeeds, on your first attempt. But you must overcome the fear of failure by understanding that even the most successful people fail. Michael Jordan said, "I failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." I really love that quote, and it does inspire me to keep going, because I'm like, the legend failed. The legend himself failed. And fear of success, I already talked about that. A lot of people fear the amount of work that comes along with success. They fear their relationships changing because now everybody wants money from them. They fear losing their leisure time. And like they say, more money, more problems. And I already talked about this, but you just need to understand that things are not going to pan out like you think they are. And one of the best frames of mind to be in is the opposite of fear. And to me, the opposite of fear is love, right? Because fear is in a way rejecting life and hating life to a certain degree. And the opposite of that is love, acceptance, trusting that things are going to work out for you, right? And the next fear is the fear of the unknown. This is a big one, and it's completely understandable. But if you are in your unconditional love, state, then you're no longer worried because the higher power is helping you and everything is going to work out in your favor. So you just trust the process. And there's no better state of mind to be in than to be in the state of unconditional love, reliance on the universe or whatever deity, you worship. Then you can overcome the fear of the unknown. Once you start to experience the proof that love conquers all, you start to realize that all of the fear you had in the past was silly, right? And the next type of fear is fear of rejection or judgment. And I'll talk about judgment in a little bit. Fear of rejection, as a guy, you go up to a woman, she rejects you, doesn't feel too good. You invite someone, maybe a friend, and they're like, nah, I can't do it. You might take it the wrong way and it hurts you. But again, no one has a 100% success rate. You need to overcome the fear of rejection and understand that a lot of times it has nothing to do with you. It really doesn't. Sometimes, as a man, you go up to a woman and she sees who you are, as far as your vibe. She may see you as a good guy and she knows she's not so good. So she doesn't want to bring you into her drama. That's obviously not always the case. And I'm not trashing women by any means. There are so many wonderful women out there. But also women have the fear of rejection. That's why most women will never go up to a guy and say, hey, I'm interested in you, or can I have your phone number? Because they're afraid of rejection. And usually they give you eye contact to signal that, they're interested. So the role of fear, it can paralyze us or it can propel us. It all depends on how we respond to it. It can paralyze us because all we do is think about that situation. And from that fearful thought, several branches come out of it of more things to be afraid of. And now you're caught in this vicious loop. And here's the thing. This is very important. This is not made up by me. Many people know this. How you feel is how you're going to experience life. In other words, if you're always in a state of fear, things are going to play out in your life that are going to perpetuate that fear. You're going to have fear-based scenarios playing out. So the quickest way to, get out of this is to start loving yourself, start loving life, and trust that all is well. Now, if you look at fear as a mechanism to help you move forward, then you could use fear to your advantage. Okay? And there are some myths about fear, that fear means you're weak. But the fact is, everybody has experienced fear at one point or another. Some of us, like myself, early in our lives, for me, I would say more than 90% of my life, I dealt with fear. It wasn't until about 3 years ago when I overcame it. and my life completely changed, and so did my joy. Now I'm joyful, and I love existing. I wake up ready for the day. I get up at 12:30 in the morning on most days, but I do go to sleep early. But when I wake up, I don't huff and puff and say, you know, not again. This day is gonna suck. No, I'm actually looking forward to the day. I'm excited. I love every moment. But once again, it doesn't mean you're weak. It actually means you're a normal human being. It's not a flaw. Everyone experiences fear. Even the legend Mike Tyson, who just had a match with, who was it? Jake Paul. But he said, leading up to the fight, I always get nervous. And of course, what is nervousness? It's fear, right? Especially for someone like Mike Tyson, who had a legendary, career. One of the fears could be getting knocked out, by someone who hasn't fought anyone really in their prime. So everyone has fear, even the ferocious Mike Tyson. So don't look at it as a flaw. Then another myth is you need to eliminate fear completely. Well, it's one thing to be in a constant state of joy and unconditional love, but you must understand that you can't completely erase fear. It's always going to spring up, but the better you get at it, the quicker it gets out of your system. For instance, I've gotten to the point where if a fear-based thought pops into my mind, it's like I have a fire extinguisher and I completely extinguish it like in record speed. Like within a few seconds, I'm like telling my mind, shut the hell up, right? I'm not falling for that anymore. And here's a personal story regarding fear. I used to have a fear of speaking. Doing a podcast was impossible for me. But I did overcome it, and I'll tell you a brief story about that. I used to have fear of speaking on social media, getting in front of a camera. I used to have a fear of speaking to people in person. And it had a lot to do with the traumas I endured growing up, which I talk about in my book, City of Serpents. One day, after 20 years, I decided to escape the marriage I was trapped in. I had to escape. And prior to that, I had cut ties with my abusive mother. And it was surreal. The experience with her was surreal. And I don't know how I survived, because I had thoughts of unaliving myself starting at the age of 9 all the way to 42. I'm 45 now. As a result of walking away from the marriage, my children stopped talking to me. I mean, at that point, I was alone. There wasn't a soul I can call. The one friend I thought I had was my father, but he abandoned me for leaving the marriage as well. So it was at that point I said, screw it. What do I have to lose? I'll make social media content. If I get ridiculed, judged, or criticized, who cares? I was by myself anyway. Cutting ties with some of the people from my past turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because it helped me get over my fear of speaking and socializing. That fear pushed me to the edge, to the point where I had to put my hands up and say, I give up on worrying. It hasn't gotten me anywhere. And besides, what else do I have to lose at this point? I've already lost close ones. What does it matter if I lose strangers on the internet? This attitude allowed me to be a lot more social in person. I no longer felt fear when talking to multiple people at the same time, and I no longer tripped over my words or felt uneasy. I realized that the fear itself is what made me trip over my words. It was putting my mind into overdrive, and my brain couldn't form the words in time because it was being bogged down by all these negative thoughts. So, you know, it may not be applicable to you because you might have everyone in your life, but I'll say this. Most people are so busy and they're so caught up with their lives. And a lot of people are self-centered, which is not a bad thing, right? As long as you're respectful of other people, you're not arrogant. You're focusing on yourself. You got your own problems. You got your career, your business, your hobbies, right? If anyone is going to criticize you on social media, it's usually the people that are having a tough time in life, or they're not doing anything and it just makes them feel better to put someone else down because it's like an internal joke with themselves. They laugh. When they post something mean, they're laughing. And that makes them feel better. So you got to see it from that perspective. It's not even a personal thing at that point. So if you do want to do social media, understand that at the beginning, you're going to have to find your pocket. You're going to have to find your niche. And over time, you're going to get better and better. And just understand that, unfortunately, you're going to get a negative comment here and there, but all I can say is just accept it and move on. Now, sometimes we confuse fear of failure with fear of success. Think about it. With fear of failure, the gig is over and you never have to think about it again, unless, of course, you like to ruminate over stuff. So, it's more of a fear of success because fear of failure, it ends. You try, you fail, it ends. You move on. But success, what if you strike it big? What if this idea, balloons and becomes a huge corporation and, you have to hire tens and hundreds of people and it's something you do for the rest of your life, right? It's a different animal, and it's actually more logical to be fearful of success than it is to be fearful of failure. So remember, fear isn't an obstacle, it's an opportunity. Some strategies here for you, okay? Just understanding that it will give you a mindset shift and turn you from a negative state of mind into a positive one just by looking at it as an opportunity rather than an obstacle. So, some practical tips. Recognize that fear is just an illusion you created or learned from others. Number 2, acknowledge and name your fear. Awareness of the fear is the first step to controlling it. Number 3, break it down. Take small, actionable steps towards facing it. Break down that fear and rationalize how it's not such a big deal as your mind is making it out to be. And then number 4, visualize yourself succeeding despite the fear. Let the thought or the imagination of succeeding completely take over your mind and minimize the fear within you. Push it out. Push it out of your mind by filling up your mind with the thought of you succeeding. Then number 5, shift your focus on what you can gain from that opportunity, not what you might lose. This is again like tip number 4. You're filling up your mind with positivity to push out that fear. And then finally, number 6, build a support system. If you have someone you trust, you can share your fear with that person, and they will enable you to let it out of your system, and they may give you some, valuable tip or valuable tips that they've learned over the years. And they might give you just some nice support, telling you not to worry about it, and they'll just help you change your vibe and get you away from the fearful thinking. Now, I want to share with you 3 affirmations. Number 1, say these often. You can say them when you wake up, during lunch, before bed. You can certainly say them more times. That's totally up to you. I am stronger than my fear. That's number 1. I am stronger than my fear. Number 2, I'm not worried about anything or anyone whatsoever. Okay, this will get you in that nonchalant mentality. I'm not worried about anything or anyone whatsoever. And then finally, number 3, I know everything is going to work out in my favor. I know everything is going to work out in my favor. And you got to trust that. Believe that. So just to recap, fear is natural and is completely manageable, and you can eliminate most of it. Recognize that it's a guide towards growth and transformation. So what I want you to do is identify one fear you'll be facing in the next 7 days. Okay? Bring it up to the surface and use the affirmations, use what you've learned in this episode to push it out of your system. Now remember, fear isn't the enemy, it's the doorway to your best self. And with that said, I want to thank you for tuning in. On the next episode, we'll be talking about building unstoppable confidence. Don't miss it. And finally, subscribe to the podcast and share it with friends and family, especially with the ones who need to hear this message.